Hey y'all, I'm the captain, and this is Sailing on the Spectrum, where I talk about the challenges growing up with autism spectrum disorder. Welcome aboard. I want to talk today about the issue of intense emotions and overfeeling and over analytical thought when you're on the spectrum. It is a myth that people with Asperger's or autism spectrum disorder lack emotional empathy. It is actually the opposite. We oftentimes, I would say really almost all of us, feel emotions so intensely that when something affects us emotionally or there's an emotional issue to work through, we tend to draw inward and we can't communicate because it's more like a defense mechanism. I know in my case, I really have the tendency, without really meaning to, for my brain to just become very over analytical, especially in situations where some emotional issue or some emotional connection in a relationship seems to be at stake, and then I just get very, it's hard to slow my thoughts down and slow my mind down from making all kinds of theories and going in all kinds of directions. But because my brain does that, I have to basically do something to like run and hide. And there are times where I just don't know how to run and hide. There's another video I might do sometimes about, or some other time about maybe the issue of fight or flight response in people with autism spectrum disorder. I mean, that's really a more specific issue within this issue, but I know that as a married man, I think it's very, it has at other times been challenging when I've needed to work through an issue with my wife, and oftentimes I would just become analytical and feel like, I had to somehow feel guilty or overly responsible for whatever was at stake or whatever issue we had to work through. And that pretty much was never the case. It was never a situation where my ability and my moral authority or my character or my worth as a person was really at stake. It was just, something like my wife just needed to talk to me about something. And, I think have learned and still learning to simply come down to earth in my head as much as I can and not make assumptions about myself or about the situation that make me feel like I'm the one being judged. And that's a big thing. A lot of people on the autism spectrum, one of the things they battle a lot is just the feeling of that they're always being judged, because it's hard. It's just that self-conscious nature that exists within all of us, but especially more intensely in those on the spectrum, that we just feel so like intensely aware or paranoid, I guess, really, about how we're affecting other people. And because we know we have a deficit in terms of social connect, we're afraid that we're being judged by it, and that somehow we're going to have to explain to everybody we interact with that, this is just the way we are, and that we shouldn't be suspected of being, psychopathic or sociopathic or just a creep. I mean, I know I felt that way in plenty of situations. And it's crazy because even though I'm married, I have a great relationship with my wife, I have a 5-year-old girl who adores me, I still feel a lot of times in certain situations that I just feel very on edge about that and about how I'm perceived, even by my the people I live with, the people who know me, my family. I know it shouldn't be that way, but it just is one of those things that's really a challenge. And it doesn't seem to just go away quickly, but it's something that I work through. I know also that even growing up, I know this is a big thing with a lot of people on the spectrum. We always have a very intense feeling and sense of things of what right and wrong is, or we really tend to be very, we inwardly rage when we see injustice. When we see things we just are just certain are not right. And I know also because I was the recipient of a lot of injustice, growing up, being picked on as a kid, and as a lot of people on the spectrum can be, they can be very vulnerable to, being the target of bullying. And I certainly was in that boat. I'm not playing the victim card. I'm just saying that's how it was. But I definitely feel very intensely for those who I see feel are being mistreated and who are being treated like they're weak and inferior, but at the same time, I think certainly in my maturity these days, I kind of realize that, I can't, make myself fix everything, and it's not good. It's going to drive me crazy if I just go out and try to fix every wrong in the world. I'm not like some people who feel they need to, just meddle in every little thing that they think is wrong, and that somehow that's their life's mission, is just to, go around with their magic wand of justice and just bop everything and everybody over the head, that just needs to be right. I don't do that, and I don't think everybody on the spectrum does that, but we feel it all the time. And it's hard to carry a burden like this around, because I always feel like I'm some sort of I know me personally, I feel like I'm some sort of an inward, silent bomb just waiting to go off. I'm not prone to temper tantrums. I'm not prone to, fits of rage. Do things make me angry? And have I felt, really, really upset and frustrated about certain things? Sure, I have. I totally have. But I think overall, I've managed those feelings in a way that I can, deal with them and not hurt people. I'm happy to say that I don't do that with my family. Even despite my challenges, I am aware of who I need to be for my family, for my wife and my little girl. And they seem to think that I'm pretty stable in terms of that. But at the same time, I still know that I really carry a weight emotionally around me, especially when I have things that I just am not sure of, things that I don't know, things that I wish I knew that I can't change right now. I can remember even as a kid, I remember when I was about 13 years old, there was this TV show, and this kid who was getting picked on. And for whatever reason, I just was crying. I was just like sobbing in the living room. And it was weird. Like, why would you get so intensely involved in a TV show that you probably don't watch all the time? But I did, because it just, it hit me that way. That's the kind of thing that I sometimes feel like I carry around. I'm happy to say that I managed to use the feelings I have and use them to help people in good ways, and not do them in ways that ultimately make me crumble inwardly all the time. There are just times when I have certain personal issues to work through that I feel so inadequate to deal with, or certain responsibilities or stuff, or certain changes that just arise every so often in my life that I just don't know how to manage, because it's one of those things that's really challenging. And I feel very inadequate and unqualified sometimes, just to be an adult. And that's the thing. It's hard, but I think I managed to do the adult thing enough to say that I have a place to live, I have a job, I have a family that loves me, and all that. And I certainly am immensely thankful for that, like every day. But there's still times that just, the feelings of doubt just seem to never really go away. You can't just, turn them off. But you can do your best to just push through them and not, get brought down so low that you basically are stuck. There may be times where everybody does. People in my camp with spectrum disorder may certainly develop anxiety disorders or depression, and they're, because they often when they're growing up with these challenges, especially when they're young, they're often perceived by others, peers, as misfits and weirdos. And I guess those are labels that are hard to get out of your head just because you happen to grow up and become an adult. You grow up with a deficit. You feel like you got a bit more of a learning curve than other people, and it just doesn't feel good. There was a great movie that came out a couple years ago, the documentary about Fred Rogers and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and it's just, you got to check it out, because it totally is it's just basically chronicles the life of an amazing, amazing man. One of the men I would have just totally, one of the top men people I admire of all time is Fred Rogers. And he, one of the characters, of course, on his show was Daniel Tiger, one of the puppets in Make Believe. And of course, there's a cartoon series based on him now, on Daniel Tiger, and my little girl watches it. But on the show, Daniel Tiger, as the puppet, who's being puppeted by Mr. Rogers, he talks with Lady Aberlin, and Lady Aberlin says something to Daniel Tiger that is something that actually certain people have complimented me on. And she says, I've always thought you were so good at understanding the deep feelings and thoughts of people. And, but Daniel Tiger's response, which is really just a thinly veiled statement of Fred Rogers himself saying this, but Daniel Tiger says, it took me so long to get tame. I just wondered how everybody else was working at it. And Lady Aberlin says, sometimes it isn't easy. And Daniel Tiger says, but it's worth a try. And I remember seeing that when my wife and I were watching it a couple of weeks ago. I just had to pause and then just go on the couch and just hug my wife for a minute, because it just really tugged at my heartstrings. That really says a lot about how I feel about myself. People can say I really do connect with other people, but maybe part of the reason is because I know it's not easy, and I don't take it for granted. I don't take for granted the people with whom I can connect and with whom I can call my friends, and I certainly don't take for granted that I have a wife and little girl who connect with me and think the world of me, and I think the world of them. But just know that it is possible to arrive at that place. I feel like I never fully arrive, but I'm arriving every day. Every day I get to be with them, and even though it's pandemic right now and I'm not able to see as many other people as I have before, the fact that I have people in my life with whom I've connected and that I've been able to impact is really special, and I don't take it for granted. And that's the thing about us on the spectrum. We can't take it for granted because we know how hard it is. So just think about that. Thanks.